Alright guys, and my name is MetaGoblin. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the gear that you can get right now in Classic WoW in the pre-patch that is so good it will last you until you are raiding in TBC Phase 1. Honestly guys, the gear stats don't really step up that much from Naxxramas gear to TBC gear. It wouldn't surprise me if many people are jumping around Karazhan, Girdle's Lair, etc. in basically Naxxramas gear because it is that powerful, and the only time you really make a change is when a particular gear piece has gem slots, and then you can stack, big fat strength or spell power gems in them. That's normally when a TBC piece is better than a classic piece, but a lot of the time classic gear just simply is really, really good, and it's just not really worth bothering to replace. However, there are some examples where the gear just literally is better than the gear that you can from TBC, and that's mainly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Obviously, when you actually do jump into raid and start getting raid loot, then you will probably start to replace this classic WoW gear. But just before we jump in guys, I want to take a quick minute to talk about today's sponsor, Dragon Champions. Dragon Champions is a turn-based RPG with a very strategic and fun combat system. You can collect and control multiple different heroes, such as my favourite, the Major Goblin Shot, who has a machine gun bigger than his entire body that does insane AoE damage to the enemy team. Dragon Champions will keep you entertained with lots of different content, and not even joking when I say this, it has more content than Retail World of Warcraft these days. There's a good campaign mode that I was actually quite surprised by with the work they put into the game to make it a good story that will actually make you feel invested in your own character, and there's also a lot of replayability due to the multi-stage options that are available in the quest line, and lots of charming humour to the characters. But if you're not a fan of games with a good story, then fair enough, Dragon Champions still has your back because there's loads of instant action fun like PvP arena mode, world boss raids. And if you guys want to try out the game, then the developers have luckily given me a promo code for you, which is Goblin Gift, and this gives you the free hero I mentioned earlier, Major Shot, and also a good amount of in-game currency to help you get started. So go and check out the description for more information about the game and use a promo code Goblin Gift to get a free hero while also supporting the channel. And let me know guys what you think of the game in the comment section down below. Anyway, let's jump in. First of all, I want to talk about trinkets. We have the Mark of a Champion for the spell power version and obviously the attack power version. Now, because this item affects undead and demon targets, you can use this for quite a while in TBC since there are many mobs which are either demons or undead, so whenever you're taking down an undead or demon boss, you can just quickly swap this trinket back in for a different trinket that you've gotten, and you will actually start doing more DPS because this trinket is so ridiculously powerful. It's 85 extra static spell damage for a spellcaster, or 150 attack power for a melee DPS. Next we have the Slayer's Crest, which is a melee DPS trinket. Now this trinket has identical stats to a dungeon drop that you can get in TBC. So it's essentially basically identical to a Burning Crusade pre-raid best in slot option. So that is ridiculously powerful. Drakefang Talisman is also a really good option because it will actually provide the, point for point most DPS if you are under the hit cap, if you're going to use Drakefang Talisman to get that hit cap. We also have an oddball option of a Black Book for those try-hard demonology warlocks out there. Obviously very niche spec, but this Black Book trinket, what it essentially does is it empowers your pet, increases your spell damage by 200, attack power by 325, and the pet's armor by 1600 for a total of 30 seconds. So that is a big DPS boost to your pet, whatever pet you are using, but obviously it's going to be the Fell Guard. Next we have the Cloak option. So first of all we've got the Cloak of a Necropolis. Now this has so much actual spell damage and other stats on it that, again, it's equal to a TBC high level dungeon item. And this is the one that drops in Naxxramas. There's also another one that actually dropped from Cthulhu. This one has slightly more spell damage, so will probably benefit a class that doesn't benefit from spell crit as much, which basically is only a Shadow Priest. And yeah, again, this actually has more spell power than some of the items you can get in TBC. We also have a melee DPS option here, the Shroud of the Dominion, which, again, is the exact same stats as a TBC blue item. Next we have the Rock Fury Braces, which is an extremely powerful big spell damage item on the wrist, and basically you probably will not find wrist gear with equal spell power to this unless it has a gem slot. in the entirety of the TBC loot table before raids. Now, this one is definitely the craziest one, the Choker of the Fire Lord. So this drops in Phase 1 of Classic WoW, and again, it's better than any of the pre-raid options that you can get in TBC before you jump into Karazhan. It is that powerful that people who obtain this in Phase 1 of Classic WoW probably going to keep it until maybe Phase 2 in TBC. Next we have the Ring of a Fallen God, which just has an absolutely disgusting amount of spell damage on it. Again, you will not find gear in TBC with more spell damage than this. It is that powerful, obviously, before raids. In fact, this gear piece is so good, it is better than loot from Magfarodon's lair. Okay, this Ring of the Fallen God, you get it from, you know, killing Cthulhu, obviously, and getting his pick-up quest item. And the equivalent version of this item for Magfarodon's actually has less spell damage. Okay, so what's crazy about that is, yeah, Phase 5 Spell Power Ring is actually more powerful than a ring that you can get from TBC, from raids. So that is just stupid. If you manage to obtain this ring, yeah, you're going to keep that for a very long time. You also have the Band of the Inevitable, which drops from Naxxramas. The downside of this one is it doesn't have intellect stat, which on shorter fights isn't so much of an issue, but fights probably going to be a bit longer in TBC. And again, this only has 1 less spell damage, the same amount of spell hit as the last item. Next, we have some really powerful wand options. So this thing, the Doom Finger, drops obviously from the last boss of basically the last boss of Classic WoW. Okay, and it's so powerful that the secondary stats for spell crit and the spell damage are equal to a wand that drops from Magfarodon's. Okay, so that is pretty ridiculous. The only thing that the Magfarodon's wand has on this wand is it has some extra intellect and stamina. And lastly, we have the Girdle of the Mentor, which essentially has better stats than any piece of dungeon gear that you can get from TBC. So again, another option that will definitely last you until Karazhan. I mean, you will notice this a lot, guys, where the gear piece is quite small, like, you know, belt, wrists, necklaces and rings. The gear difference between the Classic WoW gear and TBC loot is not actually that much of a stretch. It's not that impactful. Like, the raid loot that's going to drop from, you know, Karazhan and Gruul's Lair and everything will only have a little bit more attack power or a little bit more spell power than the gear that actually drops from Classic WoW. You will notice big, you know, impactful gear changes on the bigger pieces, like obviously weapons, chest, head and shoulders. But with the smaller pieces, I imagine most people will probably be, keeping their Classic WoW gear for quite a while. If I was rolling into TBC with a character that I had, Naxxramas on farm with, then I'd probably be prioritising just getting weapons and, you know, the chest, shoulder and leg and head pieces, because those are actually the gear pieces that are going to make the biggest impact to my DPS. But anyway, guys, hopefully now you will see the very minor differences between Classic WoW gear and TBC gear and understand how there's not that much of a gear step up between Classic WoW and TBC raiding. In fact, people will probably actually get better passes, possibly anyway, in Classic WoW than they did in TBC, because the gear, let's be honest, there's not that much difference, and then in Classic WoW people had, you know, the ability to stack world buffs, so it won't surprise me if everyone actually does less DPS, particularly in raids like Karazhan. But anyway, my name is MetaGoblin, and until my next video, ciao.